Welcome to Interview with the Blues. My guest tonight is singer-songwriter, musician, Alligator Recording Artist, Curtis Salgado. How you doing tonight, Curtis?
I'm doing fine, Greg. Thank you.
Hey, let me ask you, would you tell our viewers the story about when you realized your calling to get into music?
Uh, this goes back into kindergarten.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. There's a couple of callings there. The first one is I came home from a kindergarten and I had a note pinned on my chest. I remember that I could still picture it. I have that kind of a memory thing, third eye memory. And she pinned a note on my shirt, and I went home and my mother reached in and pulled it off and said, "What's this?" And I don't know, Mrs. Sorensen pinned it on me, and she read it and she says, "Oh my, she thinks you can sing." It says here, Mrs. Sorensen says you can sing and have a nice voice, and they want you to learn two songs. "Jesus Loves Me, Yes I Know," and "I've Been Working on the Railroad" were the two tunes. And my mother is a decent piano player. She's pretty good. She could stride piano.
Okay.
And we went to work almost immediately, and run the tape forward. I'm on stage at an auditorium, and all the parents and kids and relatives are all filled up this auditorium. I didn't even know, I got to tell you, I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know. You just follow the rules. And now I'm up on stage, and there's another boy standing next to me. And I start singing away, just blasting out. And the boy next to me is frozen. He's like stage fright. And I just am singing away. And so basically it's going like this, "I've been working on the railroad," and I'm elbowing this kid in the side of and he's just like stunned, eyes as big as saucers. I could see, and I went, and he's taller than I was. "I'm working on the railroad," like this. And the audience thought it was adorable, and I was hooked right then. Then the next time but this is the one you're probably talking about. I don't know, so please forgive me. But I saw Count Basie when I was 13 years old. My folks were jazz enthusiasts. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was 13, and I could tell you at that age who was who. I read up, I was just fascinated with music. That's what launched me, is just music. It was the most thing talked about around the dinner table and argued about. So I saw Count Basie. Speedy Rufus Jones was on drums. Walter Page, the bass player, was still in the band. Freddie Green playing guitar. Count Basie. Eddie Lockjaw Davis was one of the saxophone players. And the singer was a singer by the name of Leon Thomas, who went on to be one of the more experimental jazz singers long before Bobby Bobby McFerrin.
Okay.
And who's incredible. But this guy could I saw him when he was young, and he went on to be a very popular jazz singer. Leon Thomas, he yodels. He could do, instead of scat singing, he would yodel in pitch and blow like a sax solo, So I was just really into music. I'm really into music.
So I understand that earlier on in your career, I guess you might have been in your 20s when this happened, that you got into the harmonica and started like schooling yourself and devouring the music of Little Walter and Paul Butterfield. What was it about those two harmonica players that drove you to learn what they were doing?
Well, that was high school, actually. I was a sophomore in high school, 15 years old. And I picked up guitar when I was 13. So I'll be real quick. I ended up getting really sick with mononucleosis, and it took me out of the 7th grade for about 4 months, maybe more. And it was serious. And my dad got me a Fender Mustang and an amplifier. But what happened is that I have an older brother and older sister. So my folks were into jazz, Count Basie, Earl Father Hines, Louis Armstrong, Bunk Johnson, a guy named Henry Red Allen, Bix Beiderbecke. This is what I grew up with. Then I have an older brother, older sister. And so they're into what the kids are into. I'm in the between. And my brother and sister used to bring home all the folk records. And my sister one day brought me home, and my brother was already listening to Paul Butterfield. I knew at that time to read underneath the songs, and I would see W. Jacobs, or I'd see M. Morganfield, McKinley Morganfield. Little Walter was Marion Walter Jacobs. Chester Burnett was, who are these people? And that, it's just, you follow the domino effect, right? So you'll see where I'm going with this. And the guitar that my dad brought me home, I started taking lessons. And the guitar teacher was mean. And if I didn't get the lesson right, he'd kick me in the shin. And he'd kick me hard. And it didn't exactly, it's like, look, pow. It's like, ow, it's like, no, watch my finger, look what I'm doing. Anyhow, so I told my folks this, and my mom brought me home How to Play Blues Harmonica by Tony Little Son, I can't talk. How to Play Blues Harmonica by Tony Little Son Glover, who was, some from the same, Bob Dylan area, from the Midwest. And he's the first one and the only one who had a harmonica book for a long time. And he was wrong. I mean, I could tell by the ears this isn't what was happening. So here's the punchline to answer your question. All of that is going, and I'm already into it. And my sister, I was 15 years old. For one Christmas, she brought me home the record Hate to See You Go by Little Walter. It was a Little Walter chess release, about 1969, 1969 is when it came out. And I was 15 years old. That's when I started after I heard Little Walter, and no disrespect, I didn't pay any more attention. I didn't pay any attention to Paul Butterfield after that. Yeah, Little Walter's my Charlie Parker, He's the Charlie Parker of diatonic harmonica.
Now, who were the singers that influenced you?
Well, I just named one, Leon Thomas, but there was another guy named Jimmy Rushing, who sang with Count Basie. I mean, I'm like a little kid listening to Money Ain't Honey, Where Could My Honey Be? If I had my money, my honey would be here with me. Count Basie, Anita O'Day, Joe Williams, who did that album called Joe Williams, Count Basie Swings, Joe Williams Sings. So Sam Cooke, Wilson Pickett. My brother and sister were bringing home this stuff. Bob and James Bobby Pierfay, whatever isn't that the name? Bend Over, Let Me See You, Shake a Tail Feather. What are the other good singers? Gospel stuff. My father was bringing home. Basically, it was Count Basie's singer Joe Williams, which was a big influence on me. And later on, of course, B.B. King. You name him. Gospel, right. Blues, yeah. Now Freddie King, Albert King, B.B. King.
Okay. You've had quite a career. I mean, starting in your 20s, you were vocalist and harmonica.
Starting when I'm 50, not my 20s, man. I was playing.
When did you start playing with the Nighthawks?
Probably when I started live in a bar. When you want to know when I was professionally, would be 18 years old. Wow. 18, 19 years old.
So you were with the Nighthawks.
Yeah.
And then you're friends with Robert Cray, and you and Robert Cray have the Robert Cray Band. And then about 86?
I'm really a stickler for timeline. Okay. When I turned 18 and graduated from high school, I auditioned for a band called Three Finger Jack, and which a lot of people have, these these personal biographies get kind of screwed up, but I'm telling you right from the horse's mouth, is when I left high school, my folks said, look, take up music. That's what you seem to want to do. And I started working in a band called Three Fingered Jack, and we played in a bar that was a biker bar called the Roman Forum. And then that band morphed into another band called Harold and the Nighthawks. And Harold was from Wisconsin, Madison. And he used to be in the band for a while called Short Stuff, which had a harp player named Jimmy Laban. And then Harold left, and we became the Nighthawks. And that would be about 74, 75. And by this point, so that's about a 4-year period right there. And Robert Cray and Richard Cousins moved down from Tacoma, Washington, which is about a 3-hour drive north from Portland. And they moved down from Tacoma, which is where Fort Lewis is. Robert's father was like a high-ranking officer in the Fort Lewis. And Robert, I think, was born in Germany, so he was an army brat, is what they say. And Robert and Richard were together, and they moved into Eugene, Oregon. And I met them about 1975.
And then after the Robert Cray Band, you end up joining Roomful of Blues.
Yes.
Right?
84.
Okay. Yeah. And now, did you replace Duke Robillard?
No, I didn't.
Still in the band at that time.
Yeah, let me tell you what that was about. I have to go back to sort of how it affects me. I met, Eugene, Oregon is where I was living at this time, except before I moved back. I moved from Eugene to Portland in 1978. There was the recession with Jimmy Carter. Clubs started shutting down in 77, 78 in Eugene, Oregon. Not a lot of work up there, so the Robert Cray Band and all of us, we decided to move to Portland. More work. And this would be 1978, 79, whatever. And I was out of the Robert Cray Band by about 1981, 82. And but by that time I'd made friends, and there's this friend of mine named Jamie Radin. You folks don't know him, but he was from Boston, and he turned me on to Roomful. And, you start to, your antenna's out there, and you're coming up, and you know who your competition is. And so think about it. It's like the Vaughan Boys are out, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I'd heard of them in the late 70s. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Roomful of Blues, Bonnie Raitt, the Nighthawks, the ones that took ownership of the name, They were up in Washington, D.C., so Charlie Musselwhite and the Black Masters are still going, And this guy turned me on to Roomful. So here's what happened. Now I am working my own band, and it'll last about a year. It was called In Your Face, with a guy here in Portland named Lloyd Jones. Mm-hmm. And one day I get a phone call. I should go back a little bit. So I'm in Robert Cray Band about 1980, 1981. We put out a record, and it was called Who's Been Talking on Tomato Records. But they didn't want the band. They only wanted Robert. And rightly so. No, I'm not complaining. He's young, black, and gifted, and he is carrying the blues on. And we're the sidemen. And he doesn't need a harmonica player, but the writing was on the wall. It's kind of like, you know what? I should start looking for another band. And here's what happened. We would play down in Berkeley, California a lot. And about 1980, I stayed back and stayed in San Francisco and sort of hung out with Roomful of Blues, who came in. And Duke wasn't in the band at the time. He went off with Robert Gordon. And I was trying to audition. You know, I didn't audition, but kinda, you know what I mean, to me. And I sat in with him. We made friends. 3 years later, in 1984, in November, I got a call from the leader at this time. Duke isn't even in the band. They literally, Duke had other interests. And so Roomful, you know, they were a democracy. They kind of like, Duke, you know, see you later. They didn't fight, but, you know, Duke went off on his own. So they got a different guitar player named Ronnie Earl. And then the original piano player, I can't think of his name right now. Great piano player. So I thought I'd be joining with Roomful with Duke Robler, but they had a Ronnie Earl. And the piano player was Ron Levy, who had spent 7 years with, 5 years with Albert King and about 7 or 8 with B.B. King. And I knew who he was. And so in 1984, I was offered a job. I'd already kind of auditioned, and Greg remembered me, and he had an operation on his throat to scrape off some throat nodules he had developed. And so he says, I can't sing, and I'd like you to come and sing. So I joined them from 1984 to the very end of 86 into 87.
Let's go back to 1977. If you talk briefly about this, you and John Belushi meet at a club or a bar in Eugene, Oregon. How did that all come about? And I understand that you kind of introduced him to the blues and R&B.
Yeah, I was his muse, I'm proud to say. For proof of this, if you get the album Briefcase Full of Blues, it's dedicated to me. So something to be proud of.
We're in the middle of a pandemic here, and you released your 11th album, Damage Control. Were you recording that album prior to the pandemic, or did that take place during the pandemic?
You're very astute. And yes, it was finished in February of 2020, second week. It was to be released on the 26th of June, 2020. And we had it finished and not quite mastered yet. And February. By the time March came around, I had accepted a gig in Guam, which is the person who just happened to be calling me. He hired me to come to Guam, and him and a friend of his, and play in Saipan in Guam. That was March 11th. And by that point, COVID had thoroughly crawled up on the shores of America. And I went and did those gigs. And just a little side note, everything, all the news is freaking out, and airports were shutting down, and people were having to stop, and in a city they didn't want to be in for quarantine and whatever. And my guitar player and I, his name is Alan Hager, and I, we got on 5 different flights from Portland, Oregon, to Seattle, to San Francisco, to Honolulu, to Guam, and the airport was empty and nobody checked us for COVID. It was so odd to see, and today is just so much misinformation and stuff. It's just like, so to answer your question, I kind of went off as I usually do, is, yeah, the record was done, and it came out, 9 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago or something? Right. And it's been sitting in the can for a year. None of the songs that I wrote would sound like it's all damage control and all this. No, this was all, I wrote the songs and started in 2017, 2018, finished it in about 2019 into February. It was done by 2019, it just, we haven't got around to doing the mixing part yet.
I understand that you used 3 sets of musicians, recorded in 3 separate studios.
Yes, sir.
How did you decide what artist you wanted to use on which songs?
This is easier than you think. You know, over the years, you become friends with these folks, and you're playing with them. Let's go to Nashville. Excuse me. I can't think of the studio right now, the name of it. Not Ultrasound, that's Rock House Studios, Nashville. Kevin McKendry. I met Kevin McKendry in 2007, and by a friend of mine that I write songs with named David Duncan, who lives in Nashville. And I know that Kevin, that's when I first met Kevin and realized just how talented. And then later, I mean, within that meeting and stuff, I realized and was, he plays with Delbert McClinton, he plays with Brian Setzer, he's in Nashville. All these other music friends of mine live there as well. And I was lucky to bump into Kevin McKendry. And we wrote a couple of songs together before this. So that's the Nashville session. The drummer I met because he took a place of the Phantom Band that backs up Taj Mahal, and his name is Jack Bruno. Years with Tina Turner. He was with Tina Turner since she left Ike. And then, she's retired now, but, when she left Ike Turner, she put a new band together, and Jack Bruno was the drummer. Incredible musicians, all of these guys. George Marnelli, he's in this, and he's with Bonnie Raitt, and I've known Bonnie Raitt since the 1980s. So this story goes on over to the next studio, which is Kid Anderson, and Kid Anderson has Michael. That studio session there is borrowed from some of the guys I've already done records with and met over the years. Michael Finnegan, who's my hero, and every one of these guys I could give you half an hour story about how incredible they are. And so I know these guys, and I know what they can deliver. I know my strengths and my weaknesses, And what I'm good at is putting things together. And so I picked 5 songs for Nashville, actually 4 songs, but we ended up doing this song called Slow Down by the great Larry Williams, and who was a New Orleans rock and roll guy. At the end of the session in Nashville, one day we did 5 songs. And at the end of the 4 songs, I said, you guys got time to do another one? And yeah, let's do this old rock and roll. Boom, knocked it out of the park. And then, a couple of weeks later, I went down to Kid Anderson, an amazing, brilliant musician, a multi-instrumentalist. At his studio, it's called Greaseland. Kevin Hayes, like 20 years with Robert Cray. Kevin Hayes is his sister's Bonnie Hayes, his brother's Chris Hayes, the Hayes family. Chris Hayes is the founder of Huey Lewis and the News. Bonnie Hayes is on the songwriting staff of Berklee College of Music, and she's written so many of Bonnie Raitt songs and so many Billy Idol songs and so many Aerosmith, on and on and on. And Kevin is this killer drummer that's played with Tower Power. Robert, he was Robert's main drummer, back through the 1980s and into the 90s and stuff like that. He's played with so many people, it's ridiculous. So I know these guys. Get this, Jerry Jamont is playing bass on both the session in San Jose and the LA session. I'll tell you why. Because he's Jerry Jamont. That's why. Excuse me. Jerry Jamont's, you ever heard the song The Thrill Is Gone?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, that's him playing bass.
Okay. Yeah.
And, Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, Aretha Franklin's second in the entire, King Curtis. King Curtis discovered him. So he's on Memphis Soul Stew. King Curtis is going, let's get a half pound of some half back of this. And Bernard Purdy's playing drums and Jerry Jamont. He's my hero. I got to tell you this, I'm sitting there and there's Jerry Jamont, who is my hero. And he's on everything, all that great cotillion stuff with Freddie King, Jerry Jamont. So I'm looking at him and I'm going, Jerry, could I ask you a favor? And he kind of looks at me and he goes, do you want me to play less? Which is exactly what I wanted. But, how do you ask, it's like saying to Aretha Franklin, say, Aretha, I think you're flat there. I think you may be saying a little sharp. Maybe you could put a little more feeling into that. You're talking to somebody like that, and they make it easy on you. And why do they make? Because he's a pro. That's why. Because he's professional. And he made it easy on me. He could have looked at me with laser eyes and went, I ain't going to play anything you say. What do you know? You know. But, you know, Jerry Juma, because these guys are. So I have this band for these 4 songs in one day. And then I went down to Los Angeles and recorded 4 songs with them in one day. And that is Michael Finnegan, same as him, Jimmy Pugh, this wonderful, brilliant girl by the name of Jackie McLeod, Tony Bronigal on drums, Jerry Jaman on bass, also, and then Johnny Lee Shell owns the studio and plays the best guitar, man. I mean, these guys, I could just, you guys don't understand out there. Playing in the studio is a whole different thing, man. It's a whole different thing. You got to know what to play and what not to play. And you got to know that there might be stuff on top of, you know. So you can't just, you know, you can't just blow everything all over, you know. You're playing down a song that might, horns might come on, backgrounds might come on, violins might, whatever. But you got to make room to put the puzzle together. And that's what I'm good at, you know.
What comes first for you, the lyrics or the melody when you're working on a song?
It doesn't matter. No rules. It just, you just put it together. You just start and put it together. Sometimes it's the song. Sometimes I got a melody, and if I have a melody, I'll get together with someone that plays piano, or I'll go to the piano and I'll pick out stuff, but I'll get a better musician that will add, you know, a little more scope to what I do. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Speaking of truth be told, who was the person? Was it you, or was it someone else in your band or your engineer that decided that Wayne Toops was the guy to play the squeeze box on that song?
Well, now, who do you think it is?
Hey, you.
Yes. So I'm a big, here. Let me show you something. A story for you. In the 1970s, University of Oregon, Sue Norquist was the head of the cultural forum there, and she called me up and said, can Clifton Chenier stay at your house? He wants to put the band in a hotel, but can he stay at your house? And I don't have a house, I have an apartment. And I'm still living with Richard Cousins. Richard Cousins is out on the road, or he's at his girlfriend's house. So can Clifton stay there? And I said, yeah. Are you kidding me? So then I go and see Clifton Chenier. I have all of his I have all of his Arhoolie records. I have 2 or 3 of them. And they don't do him justice, I'm sorry to say. Because, you know, they sonically would, oh no, I'm going in another direction. But I'm going to go see Clifton Chenier, Louisiana, the king of Zydeco. He's playing at a bar. And I'm going to meet him. So, hey, man, you guys come with me and stay at my house, and then their band's going to stay there. And the reason is because Clifton doesn't give them a per diem to eat. He feeds them. And they want to eat their food, which is basically gumbo, red beans and rice, crawfish étouffée. I haven't even had any of this stuff. So I go to the bar, and there's this big guy, man. He's about 6'3", and you know, he's got that colored skin that's beautiful with this red in it. You know, this is a Creole man, right? And I look up, and his name is Davis Petrie. And he's got this big cigar in his mouth. And I look up at him, and I go, I say something stupid like, are you with the Clifton Chenier band? And he looks down at me and he goes, yeah, well, you know, what's it to you? And I say, you guys are supposed to stay at my house, you and Clifton, I guess. Or he goes, oh, yeah, baby, what's it? And I didn't know what to say. And the next thing out of my mouth was like, do you know how to cook gumbo? You know, because I never had it, right? And he pulls a cigar out and looks at me and goes, oh, baby, I'll make you gumbo, bite your fingers off. And I was like, yes. And so they were there for 5 days, right? 4 days. They were there for 4 days, 5.5 if you count the Sunday, and cooked every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the band. And the band was, get this, It was Robert St. Judy on drums. It was Jumpin' Joe on bass. It was Stanley Durrell's Buckwheat Zydeco on Hammond B3 and Clifton Chenier. And I think Little Buck on guitar. And it was the original. I mean, when they played, the college kids went nuts, and they never took a break. It was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. It's like Clifton Chenier is staying at our house and cooking, and Davis Petrie is the cook and the road manager and everything. And oh my God. And at the end of their stay there, Clifton pulled out this big wad of money, and Richard Cousins is there. I think he was staying at his girlfriend's house. So, and I remember he pulls out this big wad of money from his pocket and peels out like $300 for Richard and I. Goes, here, man, I want you to take this. You guys take this. Richard's like, no, man, you kidding me? He goes, no, man, you guys take. So Clifton was the nicest thing on planet Earth, man, and they were remarkable. So if you, the Kingdom of Zydeco, this is like a Bible, man. I am into, this is the most articulate book on this stuff. And, you know, I picked that book up probably about 10 years ago. Anyhow, Zydeco. So when Wayne Toops was on the Delbert McClinton Sandy Cruises, it's called Sandy Cruises, you know, Delbert McClinton Cruise. I've heard of him. Never saw him on YouTube. And there he is. And my jaw dropped. He is the most ferocious, got a beautiful voice. I mean, whoo, he's it. To me, is one of the best Zydeco acts I've seen out there. I mean, and so is Chubby Carrier, and you know, but Wayne's something else. You know, he's pure. He is pure Cajun, and a lot of fun, and a lot of soul, and the most ferocious squeeze. And he's not accordion; he's a squeeze box. So when I met him, he comes up to me and says, man, who are you? I like your singing. And I'm sitting there going, you know, like, you're Wayne Toops, you know. So he gave me a nice compliment. And then a couple of days later, I built up courage and went and said, say, would you play on my record if I got a recording session? Would you? He goes, sure. So that's how it happens. Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of your songs on your new album, Damage Control.
Please.
The Longer I Live. What's the story behind that song?
Well, you can tell what it's about. I'm 67 years old. I've been around the block a few times. I've had cancer a handful of times. I've had a heart attack. I've got a liver transplant in 2006, and I feel great. I'm still going. And one doctor said to me, you know, I went in, this is during my heart attack in 2017, which, by the way, I barely knew I had one. But something was up. Long story short, here I am now in the hospital, and this doctor's looking at the computer screen, and he's going, oh, let's see. He goes, you've had this, and this. He goes, he looks over at me and goes, you're kind of like a cockroach. What? What'd you know? So I had to get a laugh out of that. Why, yes, I am. You know, so that's kind of it right there is, you know, the longer that I live, the older I want to get. Dave Duncan and I wrote that. We were screwing around with the title because we were talking about this. We're getting older and this, and friends are passing away. And this is before COVID. And it's just like, you know, the longer that, and David said, the longer that I live, the longer that I want to live. And that's what it first was. And then I just worked and called him up, and I came up with the longer that I live, the older I want to get, because I don't want a double, the longer that I live, whatever. But how that came up is like, you know, what's the meaning of life? I can't speak philosophy. I know with every, and I, you know, I know with every new sunrise, the more it dawns on me. That's his line. So my first line is like, I can't speak philosophy, what is the meaning of life? Well, I can't talk philosophy. I know with every new sunrise, the more it dawns on me. Then we just go back and forth. So that's how that song came up. We wrote that song in probably 20 minutes.
Wow.
And
Where did you record the video for that? I love the video for that song.
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you.
Dance moves going on in that video.
Those are just a few. The other ones I didn't fit in time, which is stupid. Anyway, that is a guy named Joshua Huff, and very patient, and he's got a vision. So he came over to my house and said, "What do you want to do?" And he had a vision, and I said, and I'll tell you, I'll reveal it to you now. It's like, I said, "Have you ever seen Christopher Walken?" And there's a video that Christopher Walken is not only a great actor, but he's a great hoofer as well. He's a great dance man. And but I knew I had moves. And so I took a chair in the garden. I have a little backyard space. And I took a chair and I turned on the cell phone with the song on it. And I just held up this is a cell phone. I picked up the cell phone and turned on the song and had this, just set this chair in front of him and said, "Here's what I want to do." So there's 2 rolls of film, and one of them is me in a theater down the street from where I'm at right now. It's like 3 blocks up the street, and it's a bar theater upstairs. It has this huge spot. And he knows his light. And so I'm going on and on here, but he picked the spot. He knows his stuff. And bang, that's where we did it. We didn't add the B-roll. Right. But, yeah. So I'm glad you really like that. We're proud of it. We got a couple more in the can as well that will be coming out.
The song, The Fix Is In, kind of a jab at the establishment. How the establishment is screwing everybody else in this country. Why did you decide that this was a song that you wanted to put on the album?
My girlfriend said to me, her name is Suzanne, and she said to me, "You got to do a song called The Fix Is In." So I wrote a song, The Fix Is In, and what I used was, basically way back in time, the hustle is on. And the fix is in right now.
I love the title of your 3rd track.
Thank you.
My ass.
Yes. That's the first song I wrote. So I'm going to do something for you here real quick. I'm going to do something for you here. Hold on. Be patient. One, yeah, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't back no apologies. Can you hear that? Yeah. I showed you how to walk the razor's edge and a chance to finally live. What's so bad about doing wrong when saying sorry won't change the past? When I look on back all of it, I'm trying to learn it. So, So I'm teaching myself right there, I got, here it is in the key of a different key. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Different key. Yeah. Don't expect no apology. I got none to give. It's the chorus. I taught you how to walk the razor's edge and a chance to finally live. What's so bad about doing wrong when saying sorry changed the best? When I look on back of all of this, I'm trying to figure out where to put the hook. There you go. So that is, the date is February 26, 2017. And that's how you write the song. And Sorry Ass is based on, I'll tell you how it came about. This is how a song is written with me. So I'm standing on a blues cruise thing, and like the Sandy Beach cruise tour with Delbert, or the Legendary, I can't remember. They're both wonderful folks. If we ever get the chance to do it again, I'd like to advertise both of them. The Legendary Blues Cruise and Delbert McClinton's friends, Sandy Beach Cruises. Brilliant. So I'm at the back end. We're watching the sunrise, and there's an argument going over to my left about 10 feet away, and it's a couple, and it's a married couple. But it's not yelling at each other, but you can hear the grumblings. And suddenly the woman walks away, and the guy turns around. He's got a cigarette in one hand, and he goes, "Oh, yeah? When I'm dead and gone, you're going to miss my sorry ass." And I just went, I'm going to write that down. And I just thought it was a perfect hook. I thought it was a hook. Now I got to make a story out of it. So my story is, I thought about it, and then I'm thinking of my friends I've had over the years, and I've had some crazy friends. And basically the kind of people that put you in trouble that you hang out with, you know what I mean? Your friends, there's the guy in there that's like totally reckless, totally fearless, doesn't care, no filter or something, right? But you hang out with this guy, and the next thing you know, you're in trouble, and you're in trouble. And so the whole thing is, what's so bad about doing wrong? Saying sorry is not going to change the past, because when you think about me, you're going to miss my sorry ass. Don't expect no apologies. I got none to give. I showed you how to walk the razor's edge and a chance to finally live. What's so bad about doing wrong? Saying sorry won't change the past. When you look on back and you think of me, Greg, you're going to miss my sorry ass. So because I brought all this excitement in, so the fact of the matter is, I had to make a song, and the song is about my daddy's an ex-con, and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, Like father, like son, I make no amends, causing hell and then some. I'm a hazard to my friends, And
I love the boogie woogie piano playing in that song.
That's Kevin McHenry. McHenry. So when I wrote it as a rockabilly, as you can, I'm thinking rockabilly. I didn't think Alligator would accept it. And they are very open-minded, and they're letting me do my thing. Because what I do is roots music. Blues, soul, rock and roll, gospel, funk. It's all the same. It's the same omelet, just scrambled differently. You just put in this piece and put in that, and this is what it is. You're going to miss my sorry ass. I'd like to point out is that I had a friend, and when I grew up, I was 13 years old. I met this guy who was 16 years old, and he was a complete 100% juvenile delinquent. And one of the funniest, richest points of my life was hanging out with this guy who put me in trouble. And later on in his life, he became very addicted to drugs. And he wasn't a violent man, but he did rob a convenience store with a syringe. And he threatened, he goes, "Hey, man, give me your money or I'll give you AIDS or something." And they made an example out of him. And then there's another friend of mine who has put me in trouble so many times. He was a musician. He is a musician friend of mine. And man, when we were in our early 20s and stuff, he was in the Nighthawks. And I got in so much trouble with him, and somehow we made it out alive. Spinning down the street in a car, we could have ran into, we don't. Or pulled over by the police, and I'm going to go to prison, and somehow or another I didn't. It's a long story, but just, I'm being searched. I'm being searched by the police, and there's a lot of drugs on me that he handed me. He said, "Here, we're being pulled over." Like an idiot, I took them and stuck them in my pocket. Now I'm holding. And so the cop spies a joint in the ashtray, and he goes out of the car. Next thing I know, I'm over the hood of the car, and I'm getting frisked down, and this guy's going, what do you know, like this? And, he reaches in my pocket to pull out a bag of weed, but in their pocket is a bunch of hard drugs. And somehow the cop missed it, because if he would have found that, I'd have a record. But the police officer didn't. I don't know. So maybe it was hidden in the corner in a crease or something in there. I mean, here I am, and I'm looking at him. I'm going like, my knees were shaking. I'm going in. So that's what the song is about. It's like, my friend is. How exciting!
On Damage Control, 14 songs, 13 originals, one cover. Larry Williams, Slow Down.
Yes, sir.
What was it about that song that you decided you had to have that song on this album?
Because it was easy, and I've been doing it for years. And actually, I whip it out at jam sessions every now and then, turn around and say to a drummer, give me like a New Orleans second line train. And you guys remember the Beatles, they all remember that. And the bass line is completely different on the original. Larry Williams is one of my major influences. I love Larry Williams. I have just about everything he's done. So because I've done it, I know the lyrics. I knew the Nashville guys would whip it out and do it really well with Jack Bruno and a guy named Mark Winchester, I think, is playing on that, or Tommy McDonald, I think, is who's playing on that. It's Tommy McDonald. A bass player, Jack Bruno, George Marnelli, Kevin McKendry's, that's the piano you're hearing on, the Nashville stuff. And because I knew they could play it. And I play it in my band. And recently
version.
Yeah. Thank you. You know who's playing guitar on that is my guitar player. So I had all of that down. And Alan, I do that song with my band. And so here I am in Nashville. I knew I would, so the Nashville guys did it. And then I brought it back to my guitar player and said, play what you play live, because I love what he does. And he kind of does this kind of James Burton approach to it, that guitar solo. Yeah. It's like something James Burton would play. But it's Alan. His name's Alan Hager. I did a record with him called Rough Cuts. He's amazing pre-war blues guitar player, but you poke him a little bit and you prod him a little bit, and he'll whip out a solo. That's a great guitar solo, I think. And the piano solo, and so is the piano playing. I mean, it's Kevin,
I mean, the album has such an eclectic mix of everything. I mean, you've got the New Orleans going on. You've got the rock, which kind of hits that late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
The soul, little funk. I mean,
trying to. Yeah. Precious Time is if you listen to that, I'm proud of that song. It's called Precious Time. And I called up George Marnelli. That's the piano player. And it's the Nashville guys again doing it. And I said, have you ever heard of Chris Whitley? And he goes, oh, yeah, I remember that. Do you remember Chris Whitley? He one of the most popular records, like Rolling Stones' #1 record of the year in 1990 something. But Chris Whitley he's no longer with us, but he's a marvelous guitar player and songwriter and lyricist. And I just like what he did. It's not like what other people are doing. So I called up George Marnelli. He's the guitar player, and he's a journeyman guitar player. So he could play a mandolin, or he can play a guitar, or he can play, slide guitar, or he could play anything with strings. And I called him up, and he's the one. So this song, what I'm leading to, is kind of like I wanted to make a rock and roll. And that song of Precious Time is kind of like Curtis Salgado meets the Rolling Stones meets John Hyatt meets Bonnie Raitt meets Chris Whitley, you know, and that's what I'm. It's an original song, but it's, you know, so I pay, you know, I set out to make a rock and roll record, and I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I dig it a lot.
All right.
So, Curtis, what makes you happy?
Seeing a good concert, seeing music, and
What is your favorite curse word?
oh, probably MF and F, the F word. That's always a good one. Yeah, really loud, and then it's all done.
When you're on tour and you've got a day off,
Yeah.
what is one things you like to do?
On tour, day off, there isn't much. So go shopping and get something better than the crap that you get on the road at a Love's gas station. You know, so what, you don't have any time. I'm telling you the truth. That's a really good question, but that's really about what you got to, you know.
Do you have any plans to tour in 2021 to promote the album Damage Control?
I'd have plans if there were gigs. I want to get out there and play, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to play, but I'm telling you, it's not worth it for a promoter to me, you know. And I got a lot to say about it, so I got a lot to say, as you can tell.
That's okay, man. That's
Yeah.
all right. Hey, where can our viewers find out more about you, your music?
On www.curtissalgado.com. Alligator Records is another one. And if you go to my YouTubes or whatever, it'll take you right back to home ground here. I've really had to step up my game, and we're working on my internet, but it's, you know, so if you go to curtissalgado.com, you can see my website. Yeah, do they do that anymore? It's curtissalgado.com.
Yeah.
And Alligator Records. That's another one. Yeah.
Well, Curtis, I got to tell you, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to stop by tonight. You've been a blast to talk to.
Thank you very much. This was a nice time. Please tell your friends and fans I said hello. Okay. Where are you located?
In Philadelphia.
Ah, man. Really?
Yeah.
Ah, I'm honored. There was a club there that's predominantly black and very hip. But I mean,
Warm
it was
Daddies.
what?
Warm Daddies.
Yeah. Is that still
No.
going, or was?
I don't believe it is anymore. I preferred the original Warm Daddies when it was on Front Street in Old City.
Right.
And they moved it to like a shopping center, and I never went there again.
I was at the old one, and I was with a great record company called Shawnee Records.
Mm-hmm.
And that place was class, and the people were so nice, the staff was so nice, and it was just hip, man. You know,
I saw some great bands
multicultural, you know, whatever. I love Philadelphia. I mean, I'm a big gospel. That's like a gospel city, man. That's where the Dixie Hummingbirds are from there, and the Davis sisters, and so I love Philadelphia. Great place. Please tell your friends in Philly. So tell me, I like the one that gives the. I like the Philly steak sandwich with the cheese whiz on it. That's the one I like. That's soaked.
Well, you've got Gino's and you've got Pat's, and you both
What about
your choice of.
There's this other place called Tony something. Tony Luke's is, that's a good
Yeah.
one. Tell Tony Luke's hello. Thank you,
Curtis,
Greg.
Take care.
All right.
Safe. I wish you all the best, man.
All right.
This is track 9 from Curtis Salgado's latest CD, Damage Control. O for the Cry I.
Stuck
tough to be lovers, it's hard to be friends when all we seem to do is complain. It might be about money and how it don't last, or something I said, or my sins from the past. In spite of myself, I start to defend. So you go back to the top and I start back at the end, and we go over and over, don't accomplish a thing, like a hand grenade with a pole pin.
Oh, for the crowd.
That's what my mama would say. She'd tell me,
Oh, for the crowd.
just look at this mess you made. There must be an answer, got to be a way. There's something here that's bigger than me. Well, I get frustrated, so ashamed, I won't talk to myself for a week. This kitchen's just a prison and I got to break free. The problem's not you, then it must be me. I might be overthinking or going insane. I'm like a screen door in a hurricane.
Oh, boy, keep your temper down, son. Oh, look at the mess you've made.
So I searched my soul, and here's what I found. I got a hot temper, need to cool it down. Surrender myself, admit defeat. I'd stop overheating in a heartbeat. My mama was right when she said in the past, be a friend to your woman and your love will last. I can still hear her voice, her wisdom still shines, just like a diamond in a cold mine.
Oh, for the crowd.
Oh yeah, that's what my mama would say.
Oh, for the crowd.
She say your hard-headed temper gonna drive her away.
Oh, for the crowd.
Yeah, my mama told me, my daddy too.
Oh, for the crowd.
He'd say, son, don't let that temper make a fool of you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what my mama would say. Yeah,
Oh, look at the mess you made.
she'd say,
Oh, for the crowd.
just look at the mess you made. Whoa,
Oh, for the crowd.
that's what my mama would say. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, for the crowd.
They say, your stubborn temper, boy, is gonna drive her away.